Well, here we go again. Are we headed for another summer of love? Good morning, 6:05. It is great to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM as the anti-ICE protests continued in Los Angeles. And now we've got spin-off protests happening, including here in Kansas City. And I'll start off with this. The big protesting lobbyists did not send their best to Kansas City. This was not the cream of the crop. This was like the AA team protesters last night, warming up maybe for the big rallies and events that are taking place on Saturday when there will be nationwide protests happening because Trump has the audacity to have a rally and an event celebrating the military, celebrating the country. And last night you had about 100 people show up to the World War I Museum and Memorial. And then there was also another, I couldn't tell if this was the same group, but after these folks got done, about 100 people on their, basically on the steps of the World War I Museum and Memorial, you had folks who made their way up Main Street. And if you want to hear some of what this sounded like, well, we have some audio here for you on what it sounded like on the steps of the World War I Museum and Memorial.
Not gathering to just reflect, though, on our legacy. We are here to defend the living promise of our Constitution.
Yeah, that's exactly what the President of the United States is doing. I am not a constitutional expert, but I might have missed the part where the founding fathers talked about how, it's a free-for-all in this country, and anyone who wants to come here gets to just walk across the border, and they get to be an American citizen, and guess what? Nothing can happen to you. You can break our laws to get here. You can break our laws once you are here, but if a duly elected government and president decides to use legal manners to remove you from the country, that is somehow a violation of your constitutional rights. Please make it make sense. It doesn't. It hasn't made sense since these protests began in Los Angeles last week. There's not a person that they're rallying on behalf of. There's not a thing outside of anti-ICE raids that they're rallying on behalf of. We're at the point where this is just meant to cause chaos and division. That's it. And the major goal here is to drum up enthusiasm for the Democrat Party come the midterms next year. They want to mobilize their base. But they're taking a major risk here because the country is not where it was 7-8 years ago. One of Donald Trump's strongest issues is immigration. They're breaking out the 2017 playbook when the 2017 playbook doesn't really work right now. It's like in the NFL. Andy Reid's got to keep that playbook fresh. Every year, he is working on new plays for Patrick Mahomes and the boys to break it out and let it rip. Because if you go back to the same old tired playbook, guess what? The team you're playing is going to figure it out. And right now on this issue, Donald Trump, he's got him. He's winning on the issue. He's winning politically. He's doing exactly what he campaigned on. And the majority of the people, all the people as far as we can tell, that are being arrested by ICE have every right to be arrested by ICE. And most of them are hardened criminals and bad people with rap sheets in this country. We've gone through that throughout the week here on KCMO Talk Radio. So these protesters, whether it's the 100 people last night gathered at the World War I Museum and Memorial, or it's some of the stuff continuing to happen in L.A., now we've got Chicago, New York, Dallas all breaking out their own protests. It's a playbook that is not going to work this time around. No matter how hard they try, it's not going to work. And take a listen to some of the other protesters who were there last night. This is protester Holly to Channel 9 KMBC.
I love seeing KCMO getting together and be united for something that means so much to so many people. Because it isn't you versus me, it's all of us together fighting for the same thing.
There were 100 of you. I wouldn't say that was KCMO United last night, John.
Kind of looked like an open call for the Island of Misfit Toys.
Yes. I mean, let's be honest. Look at the group, and you basically have the outcasts from high school or college. That's it. And if they want to go out there and, take advantage of their First Amendment rights, they have every right to do that. I'm not saying they don't have a right to do it, but my goodness, this is supposed to sway Kansas City, the public, onto your side. I don't see any evidence to suggest that is what happened last night. Stand in solidarity, the signs. It was weird, too. I was watching, I think, Fox 4 last night, and at one point, Fox 4 is showing all the protesters, and the signs are basically, you can't read the signs. They kind of glossed them out, and they cut them out, and you couldn't see what the signs were saying. So I'm like, were the signs inappropriate? Why would Fox 4 do that? I couldn't understand why they would do that unless the signs were vulgar in nature and they didn't want to show them on the television, which also is an awful sign for these protesters. On the text line, 913-408-7957, Pete, did the musty moo-moo himself mobilize? Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that Cleaver was there. So that's something that has to be looked at. And you look at now where this is going from here. We're going to have a bunch of protests this weekend. It is not going to stop. And this is all a way by big money interests and the Democrat Party to try to drum up enthusiasm during the summer months. This stuff always happens during the summer. Keatsman did a great job explaining this yesterday during his show on Canceled at 10 o'clock. This stuff always happens during the summer. Now, in L.A., you could do it whenever because of the weather. But you can't do it in the wintertime in New York. You can't do it in the wintertime in Chicago. You can't do it in the wintertime here in Kansas City. But if you want to start a protest and then you want to see that protest spread across the country to multiple American cities, well, guess what? This is what you do. You do it right now in June. And it's not a coincidence that after a pretty quiet few summers, suddenly Trump's back. And what do you get? Well, you get suddenly protests once again. We are just repeating what Donald Trump dealt with and what he had to go through and what this country went through back in 2020. But this one is even more bizarre. It is even more out of touch. And also, unlike 5 years ago, corporate America is not getting behind this nonsense. Okay? Corporate America bought the George Floyd stuff hook, line, and sinker. That's not happening right now. Country's in a very different place. And that's why this one is going to fall flat on its face. And hopefully law enforcement here in Kansas City, if these protests continue, don't just let this stuff continue on. Because last night, they had major streets blocked off in Kansas City. You've got a right to protest. You don't have a right to stop traffic. And I know it's a balancing act here, but KCPD is going to have to make sure that they don't let any of this stuff get out of control. And a lot of the local TV reports last night were like, oh, everything's peaceful, everything's great. Well, blocking traffic and preventing people from getting where they need to go is not exactly the definition of peaceful in and of itself. But I know you've got a fine line to walk. That being said, I wouldn't give them too much leeway. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. It's great to have you here. We'll get your reaction and much more. Now, Trump and Gavin Newsom continue their beef, but Trump was technically wrong about something. And he had some of his folks covering for him yesterday. We'll explain that next. And Guy Benson will be in our studios today as he gets set for his visit to Kansas City. He should be landing in town in about an hour or so, and then he will be here at our studios for his show today. We'll have the Royals game tonight after that was ugly last night against the Yankees here at the K. And then tomorrow we've got our big show at Boulevard. It's going to be a great time, and we are looking forward to seeing many of you out there tomorrow night. So the Gavin Newsom-Donald Trump spat, this thing is getting silly. Newsom is using this to try to help his prospects of being the 2028 presidential nominee on the Democrat side. That's what Gavin Newsom is spending more time posting on social media the last few days than he is doing anything like press conferences or trying to lead his state through this crisis. But Trump, of course, is giving them a lot of material to work with in classic Trump fashion. So this was the back and forth yesterday. Trump was asked when he spoke to Gavin Newsom last.
President, when is the last time you spoke with Governor Newsom?
A day ago. Called him up to tell him, got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job, causing a lot of death and a lot of potential death. If we didn't send out the National Guard, and last night we gave him a little additional help, you would have, Los Angeles would be burning right now. Los Angeles would be not a lot different than what you saw take place in California and Los Angeles just a little while ago.
Okay, so Trump says yesterday he spoke to Gavin Newsom a day ago. A day ago from yesterday would have been Monday. This is what I do with my 6-year-old as she starts to learn her days of the week. Today is Monday, which means tomorrow is, let's say it together, Tuesday. And today is Wednesday. Tomorrow is Thursday. So I have these conversations on a regular basis. This is what I do once I get home after the show. So Gavin Newsom shares that audio clip, and he writes there was no call, not even a voicemail. He says here, Americans should be alarmed that a president deploying Marines onto our streets doesn't even know who he's talking to. So Newsom's loving every second of this. He thinks this will help him politically. I'll get to why it won't here in a second, but let's get through this part of the story first. Newsom says there was no call. So what happens? Well, Trump releases a screenshot showing he did call Gavin Newsom. He shared it with John Roberts of Fox News. Well, the call log shows that he called Gavin Newsom at 1:23 a.m. on Saturday morning. That is not technically one day ago from yesterday. That would have been late Friday night, early Saturday morning. So this puts John Roberts and the Fox team in a bit of a tough spot, right? Trump gives them an exclusive. He shares the screenshot with the phone log, but it technically doesn't prove him right. Now, this whole thing is absurd, right? It's ridiculous. It's TMZ-ish at this point. But, hey, if the president of the United States gives you an exclusive on this, well, you're going to report on it. The question is, how do you report on it? If you're John Roberts and Fox News, what do? Put you in a difficult spot, right? The entire Fox team, I think, didn't really know what to do with it because Trump sends them this information, and it doesn't really prove what he said. Remember, he says on Tuesday that Gavin Newsom, he talked to him a day ago, but this technically was 4 days ago. So it's like, oh, man, what do we do here? How do we handle this, John?
I already got the solution.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Right. So Trump talked to him Friday.
Yeah. Saturday morning, Friday
He's saying
night.
Monday.
Yeah.
One business day.
Oh, business day.
Business day. He talked to him the next business day.
That's
right?
fair. Sunday's the Lord's Day. That
Trump
doesn't count.
He misremembered by one business day. Yeah.
I like what you did there. You got to be on that Trump team, John. You know how to handle that well. Trump doesn't count Sunday. You know, he's deep in prayer. He's at church, the whole thing. So that doesn't count. That's great. Well, this is what Jesse Waters had to say last night.
Newsom responded, and he said there wasn't a phone call. He said Trump never called him. Not even a voicemail, he said. But John Roberts got Trump's call logs, and it shows Trump called him late Friday night, and they talked for 16 minutes. Why would Newsom lie and claim Trump never called him? Why would he do that?
Okay, well, technically.
President, when is the last time you spoke with Governor Newsom?
A day ago.
So this whole thing's getting stupid. Okay, let's just be honest. It's getting really stupid. What matters, of course, are the protests on the streets and whether or not the local government, the state government, or the federal government are going to do anything about it. And right now it seems like the feds are the only ones who are really looking to do something about it. But Gavin Newsom thinks this is good for him. Gavin Newsom believes that he can use this as a springboard into being the 2028 Democrat nominee. He's wrong. He's absolutely wrong. I know he thinks that picking a fight with Trump makes him look like the guy that will stand up to Donald Trump when the party has no leadership right now and is, frankly, incapable of figuring out what to do with Donald Trump. But if you think that Gavin Newsom is going to be the answer, you think that this guy that has overseen crisis after crisis, from the fires to now this disaster, go back to COVID, guy's entire career has been filled with left-wing lunacy that has failed his own people. He's overseen a state, the most desirable state for most of America's existence, or at least most of California's existence. It has been one of, if not the most desirable state in the country. For the first time ever, California is losing citizens because people have said enough. And do you know how tough it must be to leave? Like, I've never lived there. I've visited a couple of times, and don't get me wrong, it is beautiful. Weather, topography, ocean, mountains. I mean, you've got it all, right? If you've got money and you can afford to live anywhere in the world, California is likely going to be right near the top in terms of any place you can live on the planet. And people are leaving because of how poorly it's been run and managed. People can't get ahead. And Gavin Newsom has been there more or less, whether it's as a mayor or a governor, for the better part of 20 years at this point. I mean, he doesn't have a leg to stand on. But because his political party of preference has been so defined by nothing but Trump derangement syndrome, he thinks this is his ticket. And he thinks that this moment in American history is somehow helping him. And I'm telling you, I see no way, even within his own political party, this is the thing that is going to launch him into a place where he becomes the guy. He becomes the man. He becomes the face of his own political party. I find that very, very difficult to see happening. We had these protests last night. Started down at World War I, and then it made its way up Main Street, and it was fairly underwhelming. But there was some chaos down there. You had multiple fireworks going off out of nowhere, and here's what that sounded like on Channel 9 KMBC.
Now, Brian.
Yes, and this is all about solidarity with the protesters in Los Angeles. They are frustrated here in Kansas City with ICE. They are frustrated with people's due process. What they say is being violated now. It's still a little bit of a wild scene here. We had a giant firework just go off, and you can see they've kind of blocked off this intersection here at Main and Pershing, a very well-known intersection. This is where the streetcar goes along, as well as right in front of Union Station. There is another firework. Do you want to turn around and show that? Not sure exactly why they're lighting off fireworks. Anyway, it's been a pretty wild night.
Yeah, anyway, that's about that, Bob. Back to you. Been a pretty wild night around here. Well, just have to see what's going on.
I happened to have that on last night and watched this. And so I heard that first bang. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
Well, on the second one, they pan in the video over to this, and there's just basically a dark street with a little puff of cloud, a little smoke, wisp of smoke drifting.
Oh, my
So I know somebody just, it wasn't anything major. It sounded pretty loud.
Why are these fireworks? I mean, in L.A., you had commercial-grade fireworks going off. They were firing them at cops over the weekend. Fireworks suddenly are becoming like the weapon of choice. I mean, not that they were getting shot at people last night in Kansas City, but what is the firework accomplishing here?
Well, you would think with these tariffs, you wouldn't be wasting them.
Oh, exactly.
The 4th of July coming.
I know. The tariffs are supposed to impact the fireworks in a big way.
We'll never get anything from China again.
I mean, what are we doing here? So that was Channel 9's reporting last night, and I'm watching this, so this poor guy, reporter, Brian Johnson, I think was his name.
Yeah, they sent him out there.
Yeah, I guess he drew the short straw in the office yesterday. He's like, everything's going great. Boom. Everything's going totally bang. I'm like, goodness gracious. And they talked to these protesters. This was also in his report on Channel 9. And I'll give him credit. I don't know how he keeps a straight face talking to these idiots.
I love seeing Casey Mo getting together and be united for something that means so much to so many people. Because it isn't you versus me, it's all of us together fighting for the same thing.
She read that off of like a note card or something that was sent from L.A.? I love to see KCMO coming together. There's 2.5 million people in the metro. You had 100 of your closest friends standing out there walking up the street. And as far as I could tell, it's the first exercise most of these people got in months looking at the crowd.
Exactly. I think they dispersed the crowd yelling, "Free ice cream!" If you want to see the city coming together, come to a World Series parade.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And, this is happening all at Main and Pershing. And I couldn't help but think, boy, that's right where John Sherman wants to put his big old baseball stadium here in town. Did John Sherman visualize his baseball stadium in the background of these about 100 protesters lighting off fireworks and chanting on behalf of violent illegal aliens? Did he visualize that as he was watching Channel 9's coverage last night? I figured he must have moved on because at some point that game wasn't worth watching anymore out at the K. They lost 10-2 to the Yankees. But I couldn't help but think, too, like from a optics perspective, you're thinking about where to invest $2 billion. You have questions as to whether or not this city's leadership, not just now, but going forward, as cities seemingly get bluer, whether or not the cops are going to be allowed to do their jobs. You're going to have to worry about every time there's a Republican in the White House. Boy, I hope my baseball stadium doesn't get burnt to the ground this summer because we're back where we were in 2020. Where are you investing $2 billion? It's one of the reasons I thought the Northland was a pretty good spot. Now, I don't think the Northland's in the mix. I think that they really want to be in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. That seems incredibly clear to anybody paying attention. But you putting your $2 billion investment there? And that's the other part. I mean, the cops were kind of like blocking off streets last night and making sure these protesters were able to have their fun, walk up and down Main Street. You're allowed to protest. Are you allowed to shut down streets? And why is KCPD allowing that last night, John?
Well, I noted the location. They started, Liberty Memorial and walked up the street? Right? They weren't on the plaza.
Yes, correct.
Interestingly enough, not on the plaza.
Not on the plaza. Start at World War I and then make their way up Main Street.
It's too far to walk from the plaza to the city hall.
Please trust me. These people hadn't seen a treadmill in their lives, as far as I could tell. So, no, that was not going to happen.
You're right. Stop at the Quick Trip there on Main 4. Get there. Get a sandwich.
I mean, late night snack, right? I mean, jeez.
This is uphill.
I mean, someone's got to start paying for better protesters around here because this was not the cream of the crop. I'll tell you that right now. Maybe they're saving the Major League team for Saturday when all these big protests are going to be breaking out around the country. Coming up next here on KCMO, the Elon Trump bromance may be back on. We have some apologies that are being issued. We'll share it next on KCMO. I don't know if that's true. Nice job there, Mark. Elon Musk may be ready for a reunification with the President of the United States. They may be getting back together. Elon posting this morning at 2 o'clock. So he was up late last night doing God knows what. I regret some of my posts about President Donald Trump last week. They went too far. Whoa, that was quick. When this story broke late last week, I was off Friday, but we came back Monday. I said, I don't know if this is going to be the breakup that the media wants. The media was just all loving every second of it last week because they thought that this meant that Elon may run back into their arms. Remember, they love billionaires when they give to protesters and riots in L.A. and protests in Kansas City. They love George Soros, right? They rail against billionaires, but they like their billionaires. And they thought, boy, we got Elon. He's out. Now he hates Trump. Now he's accusing him of, flying with Epstein and the whole thing. Oh, we got him right where we want him. And within a week, Elon's like, yeah, my bad. Sorry, bro. Let's get back together. Good for him. Trump came out of that spat with Elon looking better. Elon looked like a petulant little baby
I wouldn't have bet on that either.
I know, me
right?
neither.
Okay.
Me neither. Like, listen, Trump is never afraid to get in the mud with anybody. It was the first time we had ever seen Trump basically take the high road in one of these spats. Look what's going on right now with Newsom. Trump loves this stuff. I think Trump gets his energy from these public spats. He craves it. He needs it. And with Elon, he was like, "Yeah, I wish him well. I'm good. Hope he gets his, stuff in order." He said yesterday, we played the clip yesterday. I guess he said it on Monday. He was like, "Hey, I'm not getting rid of my Tesla. I'm not getting rid of Starlink for the U.S. government. They're good products." He's like, "I might move the Tesla around a little bit, but I'm not getting rid of the Tesla." Trump came out of this thing looking like the adult. Elon came out looking like the child. And that actually ends up being a win for Trump in all this, right? He's the one who just takes the high ground. He's the one who's like, I wish him well. That's what Trump said. I wish him well. Ask yourself why he would do that, because I think a part of him knew, one, I do want to keep this guy on my side. I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of reasons. You got about 500 billion reasons why you want to keep Elon Musk on your side, right? And I also think that Trump actually, even though he was probably livid with Elon last week, I think there was a part of him, too, that still had a lot of respect for, first off, what he did with Doge, what he did for his campaign. And he also just respects who Elon Musk is and the businesses that he's built. And he couldn't get himself to treat Elon Musk like he treats Nancy Pelosi or Gavin Newsom or any of these other political hucksters who he has no respect for because they haven't ever done anything in the real world, John.
Well, we can't put the square peg in a round hole here when we want to say that Trump's a dictator, because we all know what happens when dictators vanquish an actual foe. Doesn't usually work out well for them in other countries, right? So
that's so true.
We're going to have to get rid of that storyline.
We are. So this coming down at 2 a.m. I'm encouraged by it. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO. I always thought, I was like, you know what? Elon looks terrible here. This is not going to be good for him. And Trump, for days, took the high road, including when he said this week.
Are you going to get rid of the Tesla and the Starlink service that you have here at the White House?
No, I haven't heard that. I mean, I may move the Tesla around a little bit, but I don't think we'll be doing that with Starlink. It's a good service.
Where are you going to move it to? Move it around. What do you mean?
I have a lot of locations. I got so many locations, I don't know what to do with them all.
Did you ever see Elon Musk get physical with the Treasury Secretary?
No, I didn't.
And I tried to
They did have an argument, but I didn't see a lot of physicality there.
And there was this New York Times report that he did not want to talk about, Elon Musk, that alleged that he, towards the end of his time in the White House, was blurring the lines between recreational use of drugs and medicinal. Do you think he ever had drugs here at the White House?
I really don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. Look, I wish him well. You understand. We had a good relationship, and I just wish him well. Very well, actually.
All right. There you go. That was Trump this week. Now Elon saying
very well.
Very well.
Wish him well. Very well.
Wish him very well. That was Trump just a couple days ago. Now Elon saying on X he went too far last week. On the text line, come on, Pete, Trump wasn't livid. This was all planned to trick the media. That's on the text line. Ooh. That's a creative take right there. I'm not buying it. I don't believe that. I don't think this was some kind of media trick because Elon and Trump are better together than they are apart. And Elon, he was saying some pretty nasty things last week about Trump. Personally, professionally, big, beautiful bill. There is no way that was a setup to try to trick the media. I don't buy that for a second. I appreciate the outside-the-box thinking, but I am not buying that one at all, that it was a way to fool the media, John.
Yeah, as Elon's time runs out as a temporary employee or whatever, maybe he thought he was going to get asked to stay on a little longer or something.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know.
He couldn't. I mean,
no,
this
I know
thing was going to end.
But you know how ego will say, well, I'm doing such a great job here.
Yeah.
I think I've ingratiated myself.
On the text line, do you think those two sit around and just plan ways to mess with the media? I definitely think they do that and had done that. I don't think that's what last week was about, though, at all. Now, this news breaking here as well. Speaking of the president, he just posted this on his social media, Truth Social. All caps, our deal with China is done, subject to final approval with President Xi and me. Full magnets and any necessary rare earths will be supplied up front by China. Likewise, we will provide to China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities, which has always been good with me. Wait, what? We are getting a total of 55% tariffs. China's getting 10%. Relationship is excellent. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay, I got to see the details on this. I'm not going to say this is awesome. Wait, hold on a second. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about removing student visas for Chinese nationals from places like Harvard so, American students could actually go to these colleges. Now we will provide to China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities, which has always been good with me. That's not good with me. Could we educate some American citizens around here? Could we give them a chance to go to Harvard? It's hard enough to get into places like that. But if American citizens want to go there, I know some of you are going to say, I wouldn't send my kid there anyway. I get that. But they should be for Americans first, second, and third before we start worrying about folks from other countries, whether it's China or anywhere else.
Well, true that, but we have highlighted that we need to get them out of high school first.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, that's fair. Man, okay, I got to see the details. This just breaking from the President of the United States here in the last few minutes, that a deal has been agreed to with China, subject to final approval with President Xi and me. I can't really opine on it anymore because all we have right now is a Truth Social post about it. Let me see what the markets are doing here. The futures, of course, with the markets set to open up in about 45 minutes. Not much. Everything's up a little bit, but less than 0.5%. So not a lot of traction there on the stock market right now.
This in from Walmart.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, we got a China deal this morning. How about that? Man, this news cycle's just ripping and roaring right now. This is interesting stuff. We also just got an inflation number that came out in the last few minutes. We will bring you that and how, once again, it is beating expectations. What does that mean for the economy? We'll dive into it next on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming all morning long on what has been a very busy morning so far on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Eric Schmidt is going to be on the Guy Benson Show, although actually just heard from his producer that Eric Schmidt may be a tentative booking today because tonight's the congressional baseball game. I'm starting to think that Eric Schmidt, who I just saw on Fox and Friends getting ready for the congressional baseball game tonight, I'm starting to think that Eric Schmidt ran for office just so he could play in the congressional baseball game. He loves this congressional. I mean, the guy's been tweeting nonstop or posting on X nonstop about the congressional baseball game for he's been going to batting practice every day for the last 2 weeks getting ready for this game.
Guy Benson just needs to tell him this is a pregame interview, and then he'll come right on.
Yeah, he did that one commercial. One of his early commercials had him taking some swings with the bat.
That's right.
Remember?
Yeah.
I was kind of gooning him because it was an aluminum bat.
He's got a Cardinals hat on in every one of these things.
Yep.
It's like, I know, Cardinals hat, Republicans, red. I know what you're going for there, but can you mix it up a little bit? Throw on a Chiefs hat, do something. Keep the red going. Just give Kansas City a little bit of love, would you please? The inflation numbers came out here in the last 15 minutes, and here's what we've got. U.S. inflation rising 0.1% in May from April, which came in below expectations of 0.2%, and the annual inflation rate came in at 2.4%, which is right in line with the estimations of 2.4%. Excluding food and energy, core CPI came in at 2.8%. That is below the expectations annually of 2.9%. So the good news is that the numbers came in below expectations. If you want the bad news here, inflation annually did tick up year over year for the first time since January. It was the first time since January that we had seen inflation go up. Now, up a hair, but still. In January, we were at 3% inflation. February was 2.8. March was 2.4. April was 2.3. And now we're slightly back up to 2.4%. I've seen a lot of people in Trump's inner circle who are saying, hey, inflation came in below expectations, and now we've got this China trade deal that Trump announced this morning. It's time to start cutting rates. I promise you the Fed will not cut rates. The odds of the Fed cutting rates next week are 0. May CPI inflation coming in, yes, below expectations, but it is the first time since January that headline CPI inflation is back on the rise. They're not going to do it. They don't feel comfortable doing it right now. And Trump's right when he criticizes Jerome Powell, who was very late to increase interest rates during Joe Biden's tenure. He bought into this nonsense of inflation's transitory. It's going to be fine. Just don't look here, look there. He was dead wrong about it. They should have increased rates about 6 months earlier than they did. And this might not be as messy of a situation as it is right now with inflation. So Powell's been late before, as Trump calls him, too late Jerome or something like that. I think he calls him too late Powell. I don't know. Sounds like a sitcom character. Yeah. Too late Jerome. The guy always shows up late to the family parties or something. That's like a character out of Everybody Loves Raymond, Too Late Jerome. But it's like that is definitely one of those things that Trump is right to bring up. Powell's seemingly always late. But they don't want to start cutting rates right now at the fear of spiking inflation even further. And they're right to do that. The Fed's goal is for 2% inflation. We still aren't there. I mean, yeah, we're closer to being there than we ever were, but don't forget, the high prices are already baked into the cake here, right? The 20% inflation that we suffered through from 2021 to 2025, it doesn't like go back to where it was. Now we're just trying to limit the damage from here on out. But the overall price increases that we suffered through don't go back down. They're barring some type of massive economic collapse. They're not going to go back down. But we still haven't hit the Fed target of 2% inflation. And I'm not saying that's anybody's fault right now in Washington, D.C. I mean, the guys have been there for 4 months. But you at least have to feel like you're back down to your target of 2% inflation before you start sitting there and saying cut the rates. Because the minute you cut the rates, what happens? Refinances of mortgages happen. People start taking out more loans. And yeah, I want to see the car dealership business do better. The mortgage guys are getting crushed right now. I want to see home prices come down a little bit. Although prices of the homes may not come down, it'll just be cheaper money. So that's a totally different conversation. Like, yeah, I'd like to see that for a lot of people who are hurting right now. But if it means going back up to 3-4% inflation, that's ultimately not going to be good for anybody. So Trump wants Powell to cut rates because he wants to get some easy money back into the system. But if that helps inflation take back off, that doesn't do anybody any good. So that's why there is not a shot that Powell reduces these rates. And frankly, at least at this point, I don't think he should, because they're not down to 2% inflation yet, which is where they need to be. The pressure's got to be on Congress, right, to continue to cut some more. That's where the pressure needs to go and needs to be. Not on the Fed. The pressure's got to be on Congress to get rid of the crazy spending, which has skyrocketed inflation. We know that the big, beautiful bill doesn't really do that as much as many of us would want it to. But now you've got, not to get too much into the weeds, but you've got all these rescission packages that are being addressed this week by the House. And Mark Alford's going to be on tomorrow to talk about this. And that is where they can basically take a bunch of these DOGE cuts and implement them and make it so that the money that the Biden administration had earmarked will no longer be spent on nonsense, which is great. But that's where I would put the pressure, not on Jerome Powell to get more easy money into the system. Make sure the federal government is being responsible for the first time in a long time, or at least more responsible than it's been in a long time. And then see what the inflation numbers look like, and try to get back to a regular 2% inflation number. Because we don't want 3% inflation to become the norm. We don't. I don't want that. That's not going to be good for anybody. I mean, it'll be okay for the super wealthy. They'll deal with it. But for the working class, if you want a robust middle class, you don't want 3% inflation to be the annual norm. And just because the guy that I voted for happens to be in office, I'm not looking to necessarily help him. I'm looking to help the regular people. And that's what the target should ultimately be about. How do you make sure you have a robust middle class? Crush government spending, get it down the responsible levels, and then see what your inflation numbers come in at, and then look at rate cuts from there. That's got to be the goal here. And I hope that's the approach going forward. But I'm sure we're going to get tweets today about, Powell and lowering rates and everything else, which is frankly not the answer. 913-408-7957. That's our text line. How you join us here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming all morning long on the KCMO Talk Radio app.